I'm here in Chiang Mai. There's Edge City going on. Vitalik is here. He was talking about stable coins this morning and Ethereum roadmap. I think Ethereum roadmap's kind of top of mind for a lot of people right now. Kind of clarity around that. Where does base chain go? What's happening for layer twos? Obviously I'm interested because as we develop some of the games, figuring out how to align those with the right audiences is super important. So it's like kind of a very big strategic move. I touched on last week kind of the downsides of maybe choosing an ecosystem that doesn't end up going the way that the rest of the industry is going. And so we're not going to make that mistake again. So, anyways, we are doing a lot. There's probably the best thing for us to cover is our plans for mission control. So let me cover that now. And again, this is like this is just the first. I want to share this, and then what I'll do is I'll just create a little write up, put it in Discord, and then we can discuss. But so don't think that like we have to decide everything right now. But we've been doing a lot of thinking around it, and I think we have a pretty interesting plan. So I'd like to share that here. Okay, so mission control, let's talk about it. We have a really interesting game loop with mission control, but I think like the way to make it basically to accentuate the interesting elements of mission control, I think we need to basically allow for more customization of the simulations that we're running. So the high level is that we have we continue mission control classic, which we just think of like what mission control is now is like the classic unchanged continuous simulation powered by the Wax blockchain, running Thrive game engine on Wax, and it just continues on. NFTs continue, expansion missions continue, and it basically stays as it is. We think it's important for this to continue on because it's basically like the it's the original simulation. It's all the NFTs are tied there. We don't really want to like rock the boat on that at all, because it's been what we've built out. I mean, when we started this in 2021, we basically evolved into that game, and it's our roots. Yes, exactly, Stephanie. So think of it as Mars Mission Control Classic, and then we have Mars Mission Control on EVM, and we can call that Mars Mission Control. We can call it main. We can call it, just think of it as the new Mars Mission Control. So we have two of the same game essentially running, but this new version is the same mission control experience, but there's a key difference, and that is instead of loading into a single simulation that's going on continuously, players could set up their own game lobbies that have finite time frames, and these are customizable game lobbies. So any player can sponsor and configure their own simulation by selecting parameters like time frame, as well as the main objective of that simulation. And so we envision, some of these games being like as short as a few hours, or you could go as long as a couple months. And so it's essentially the mission control game, but if it's a few hours long, then the resource runs happen a lot faster. The objective could be anywhere between produce the most Martia to own the most in the colony to produce a certain amount of resource, be the top producer of water. And so the player that sets it up basically decides the time frame, decides the objective, and then eventually maybe we have some other parameters that you can customize, things about hazards, things about what tech you can use, starting prices of resources, all that stuff. The reason I'm thinking of it as a lobby is because you would need to attract a certain amount of players in order for the simulation itself to actually start and kick off. And so, this prevents a lot of lobby like churn and wait, and it incentivizes people to come up with really interesting games. But think of this almost more like Monopoly, where you have, everyone starts with the same amount of Monopoly money, same opportunity, and then you go through and the most skilled players rise to the top over the game mode. And then at the end, everything gets cleared and you enter a new lobby, or you decide on a new simulation you want to be a part of. The thing that would, of course, let me just see what. Yeah, so I'm getting to it, Spectre. But I think it's important to start with, what is the game? What is our vision for the game? This is actually super interesting because what's really cool about Mission Control, what's always been cool, is we've tied it back to scientific principles of the technology. And these faster games allow us to test different scenarios, with more freedom and actually, in a decentralized way, hand the creativity over to the players to decide what scenarios they'd like to test. And then we can really start testing a bunch of different ideas on interesting simulations to run. And that's pretty cool. Like, imagine being able to run a game where you only have solar panels as power sources, or you have to work with only a certain amount of um, astronaut specialties. So maybe taking away some of the technology, seeing what would happen, like that's kind of cool. And everyone has the same starting point. Now, let me get to the economy because you might be asking, okay, well, how do the NFTs play into this? How does all that stuff play into it? So the thought is that this new mission control mode would be on an EVM compatible chain, and you would be able to bridge Martia from Wax over to this chain. It might be Ethereum layer 1. It might be a layer 2. This is what I'm figuring out. But basically, you'd bridge Martia over, and then you would use Martia to purchase to cover the cost of the lobby, the cost of spinning up a lobby. And then we would split up the Martia emissions between classic and main based on the number of active wallets playing each game mode. And we could put sort of a ceiling or floor on it, but think of it like if there's 5,000 people playing classic, 5,000 people playing this new mode, then each hourly Martia mission would basically be 50% goes to classic, 50% goes to this new mode. And then that would be paid out to the whenever game lobbies end, it would essentially pay out the Martia based on the objective. And we think that it would essentially just be best to do a leaderboard, a rank of the people that are the most successful. So like in Monopoly, if you win, when you place first, you're the one holding all the ownership. With Mission Control, of course, we can rank down to like hundreds of people. So what would probably happen is we take the top X amount of people, how they performed, and distribute that Martia according to their rank on the leaderboard for that game lobby. But if you're playing a game that only lasts 4 hours, you can take your knowledge from how you did in that game and be like, okay, I made this decision. I invested some of my in-game Martia in expansion missions, and I should have instead purchased technology because this player was able to generate more Martia in the game because of this. Now, the Martia inside of these game lobbies would not go outside of the game lobbies. So we might even call it something different than Martia because it's not the same as the token. It's just the unit of account for like the medium of exchange inside of the game. So it's monopoly money essentially. That's like what we would. It's not the same as what's used in Classic because Classic is the actual token you can withdraw. Same thing with NFTs. So the idea is that this new mode wouldn't actually use any NFTs at all. It would just use Martia, and NFTs would stay on Wax. NFTs would stay in Classic. Nothing would change about that. And we could even add some new NFTs in over time if that's interesting. So Martia is the token in the new game is used for entry fees for setting up game lobbies. And then the other thing we're looking at is using Martia ETH liquidity. To start a game, there needs to be a minimum amount of Martia ETH liquidity staked in order for a lobby to get started. So that's another thing we're thinking about. But we're kind of basically interested in a certain amount of liquidity, a certain amount of Martia burned from this new game mode. That's kind of like what's important. And if we go to a very popular EVM compatible chain that is hungry for games that have strategic depth, because let's face it, a lot of blockchain games are very simple and boring. Mission Control out of the box is essentially like 10 times more interesting, I think, than a lot of games. So like we bring that value to a new chain. A lot of players come in. We say, okay, there's a bit of liquidity that needs to be staked. Maybe even some whales come in. They have a lot of liquidity. They join, a lobby, and they cover the entire liquidity needs for that lobby to kick off. And essentially, what we're doing also is like it costs a bit of money on our side to spin up a new game lobby. And so like the liquidity helps cover that cost. And then of course the Martia being burned helps the Martia circulation, the Martia supply and circulation. So that's kind of the basic idea. And then we also think of things like skills, think of things like innovations. Those are all basically things you can earn inside of these game lobbies, but they would reset at the end of the game. So uh, the you still choose a specialty, you still level up your specialty. Obviously, if it's a shorter game, then it would be a quicker leveling up. Like the requirements for leveling up your specialty would scale based on the total time of the game mode. But that's possible for us to do from a technical perspective. And I think it would work quite well. And I mean, just envision, like getting a lot more quick feedback when you're succeeding and when you're failing. Like rather than waiting, a couple days to see where things are in your resource chain are going, you're basically getting feedback a lot quicker. And if it's a shorter game, and you make adjustments more on a real-time basis, and it kind of increases the adrenaline, the excitement. And you're also like constantly checking the leaderboard to see where you're at, and that's kind of fun. I mean, it's like uh I guess the reason I'm drawing a parallel to Monopoly is just because, you know, Monopoly, it's kind of a similar time frame as what I envision a lot of the game modes being on this new mission control mode. You play it maybe over the course of a couple of days, maybe you play a really fast session, that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm gonna go through a couple more things, and then I'll jump over to the questions. Yeah, so one thing I wanted to cover, like another piece of this idea, is there's still progression. So when you finish a game mode or game session or a lobby or whatever you want to call it, at the end, depending on your leaderboard rank, you would get XP, and your XP basically just ranks up your player profile. And at different XP levels, like let's say you earn 100 XP, you go from level 1 to level 2, et cetera, et cetera. We're working on a larger system with some of our partners, which is essentially like a loyalty program. And the idea is that as you progress through the different levels, you get loyalty points, and these loyalty points can be spent in a marketplace. And this marketplace would allow you to purchase merch for free from us. So you'd be able to buy like a $50 voucher to use in our game store, or sorry, our merch store. And then we're also working with other partners, like to be able to purchase other real world items and goods with your loyalty points. So the way you earn these loyalty points is by playing the game and spending time in the game, and then being skilled at the game. And then the second way you earn these loyalty points is by staking Marsha and ETH. And so we'd have a little dashboard where, you're basically, the more you stake, the more you earn these loyalty points. And it's essentially like you would stake liquidity, and then you would lock up your liquidity token, and that would give you these loyalty points. So the longer you lock it, the higher your multiplier. All pretty straightforward stuff, pretty standard liquidity incentive. But instead of us paying out more of the base token, we are rewarding people with real world utility, which I think needs to happen for staking programs to actually be long term. So, anyways, that's the loyalty system. We can get more into the weeds on that, and of course, we're like signing on partners to make that more of a thing. But it's a little bit of a moving car, because our goal is loyalty points are earned in all of our games in different things. So not just Mission Control, but also Opal Adventure and Outpost Surge and others. So you can kind of earn them in different games, and that's a way to find out about other games in our ecosystem. So yeah, and then I guess like one little detail there also is we really want to incentivize liquidity staking in Mission Control. I think that's like a key thing. And so we would multiply the amount of liquidity you've staked by the amount of XP or it would basically adjust the amount of XP you get per game session depending on the liquidity you staked up to a certain point. I mean, we're not going to like make it a 1-to-1 relationship, but it would have an influence on the XP you would get per game session depending on your liquidity staked. So, more reasons to stake liquidity, and those reasons tied to either game utility or real world utility, to me, is the most long-term solution. And I haven't really heard of anyone else doing that. And so, yeah, I would say that's kind of the full shape of the idea. So what I'll do is I'll just post that in Discord as text, and then you guys can comment on it. Comment on what parts you like. If you have questions, we're still, of course, happy to like adjust it, modify it, but we really think that not only would this breathe a massive amount of new life into the game we all know and love, it would really give it a very viable path to being a popular game on an EVM chain. And it gives token holders of Marsha a lot of extended value and utility of the Marsha that they have, and they've been holding on Wax. It gives it utility beyond Wax, which is really where we need to be. We totally understand that, and I know that that's been a subject of discussion in the chat. But I'm trying to be as like solution oriented as possible, and also look at the long-term solutions. And I think that the whole blockchain industry, it's moving rapidly, it's changing. There's a lot of really cool things going on, and the future is like it's basically it's the future. There's a huge future on EVM, which for those of you who don't know, it's Ethereum virtual machine. It's basically the tech stack of Ethereum and all Ethereum chains built on on top of Ethereum layer 1. It's where all of the attention and capital and interest is going right now. There's obviously Solana as well, but there's a risk I think if we go to Solana, they're a bit of an island, and I think that the the best strategy for us to have is to basically be to reduce as much risk as possible in the way that we approach blockchain integration, and that to me is EVM. Okay, so yeah, I mean, and then of course, like in addition to this gameplay stuff, like we're also in the process of totally revamping all of our website and marketing materials. And I mean, essentially, like we're just going to call ourselves Thrive Game Studios. Um, Thrive on Mars. We'll still keep that domain and those usernames because it's a really cool name, but we'll display as Thrive Game Studios in all of our current channels, and then we have new, like much improved, like logos and branding for the different games. And like I think that having some fresh uh visuals, and also like I think for Mission Control in particular, I want it to feel like the branding to feel a bit more like a game. And so I think we're going to do a lot of things to basically communicate that it's like a full-fledged game. And I think the logo is a little bit dull, to be honest. I think some of the graphics are a bit dull. So we're gonna vamp those up quite a bit and make them a lot more interesting. And so yeah, and then we'll move the game itself off of the Thrive on Mars site and have sort of a dedicated one for Mission Control, so that the basic like hierarchy of the branding is like Thrive Game Studio we keep on our website, and then we list each game that we're building on that website, and then it just links off to each of the game websites. So we already have outpostsearch.com, we have Opal Adventure, we have whatever Mission Control is, and then we have Martian Resident, and those are different sites. And this is pretty much the model that most game studios use, because people want to search by the game title. They don't really necessarily, like, people aren't typing in Ubisoft when they're looking for Assassin's Creed. They're typing in Assassin's Creed. So they want to see an Assassin's Creed Twitter page, they want to see an Assassin's Creed website, and et cetera, et cetera. Um, people aren't typing in Bethesda when they're looking for Starfield or Fallout. They're typing in Fallout, and so like we're gonna align our branding around the games, and um, like basically make it so that if you want to play Mission Control, you type in Mission Control. You have the website, you have the socials, you have dedicated channels. I don't think it makes sense to break up the Discord. I think like Discord can still be under Thrive Game Studio. I don't think our games are big enough to justify that, but we might mix up Telegram a little bit. Um, and like I think Twitter, like what we'll do is probably just have different Twitter accounts for each game, and then Thrive basically just retweets those, and so it's still central, but um, yeah, that's kind of the thought there. So a couple adjustments there, but yeah, generally speaking, that's the Mission Control um, update. Let me get to the comments here. All right. Spectre, yeah, I think burn the oversupply Martian, indeed more reasonable. Yeah, so I mean, you know, like the more that people play this new Mission Control version, and again, this isn't, we're not like releasing this tomorrow. Like it's going to take some time for us to put the infrastructure in place to build this, but um, yeah, I mean, it should be a pretty big burning engine. Locking, staking, and burning classic Martian to run a game lobby seems to make sense, but I wonder would players these new simulations be able to do something with the Monopoly Martian they earn? I.e., how does it attract people's time and attention to play in a lobby game? So this is really where, you know, we need to decide like if so for me, um, the blockchain gaming ecosystem and industry is evolving, and what I plan on being is, or what I think this needs to, what I think Thrive Games needs to be is like the games need to stand on their own merit, and um, like I said before, I think Mission Control is bringing a massive amount of interesting strategic gameplay, but it needs to be packaged and experienced in the right context in the right way in order to maximize what's interesting about it. And I really think that the key is to have finite timeframes for simulations. I think that's the key shift that brings the game instantly into a much more interesting space. And so when you talk about how does it attract people's time and attention to play, well, because the game's interesting, you know, and I think that's like it's an interesting game concept. And so when we're listing ourselves on, you know, different game marketplaces and launchers that have real traffic, because let's face it, Atomic Hub does not have traffic. They just don't. So like no one's finding any of the games, no one's looking anywhere. Um, when you put yourself on like Magic Eden, where there's hundreds of thousands of real gamers that are looking for games. I mean, look at the kind of numbers that Off the Grid is getting from their YouTube videos, and that's like, you know, hitting pretty well on YouTube and etc. Like those are actual gamers that are playing a game that's supported by blockchain. Um, you know, like when we get our game in front of those people, it needs to be fun. And that's why they spend time and attention on the game. You know, like that's what will make people um, click on the. That's why the logo is important. That's why the brand is getting updated, because people they 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 need to see pretty quickly, like when they look at it, when they're evaluating a game, okay, do I want to play this? If yes, um, you know, it needs to kind of check the boxes. And I think there's there's a need for there's shortened attention spans in gaming, just generally as a trend, and having the ability for people to experience mission control, but do it a little bit more in a bite size, a little bit faster, and get some a lot quicker feedback on how they're doing within the game, I think will actually make it a lot more fun and addictive. I think people will want to go and do another game if you know they place 10th in one lobby, and they said, oh, you know, I wish I would have I wish I would have bought, you know, more water production and more power so that I could have, you know, gotten more data. And then I should have picked this specialty because I ended up needing, you know, more construction materials because, you know, this guy got a really good payout from an expansion mission because he had more construction than I did. So next game mode, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I think like one of the challenges with Classic is if you make a strategic mistake, it just continues to compound. And so it's really cool because it's going to go on for like probably decades and just be interesting to see where it ends up. But like, it also makes it really hard to like try new things as a player. And, like, it's the reason why you go back to board games, like, yes, there's board games like D&D where you can play it for 40 years, but most people are playing board games, over the course of a couple hours or less. And part of the fun is you kind of take risks and you decide on a strategy, and then, if you lose, you lose, and you reset the board and you go again. And, I think that's kind of where directionally Mission Control needs to be in order for it to hit more of a mainstream audience. So anyways, that's kind of to answer your, sorry, that's a long answer, Michael, but I think like the, I think the question really needs to be where can we find more fun in the Mission Control game? And then naturally, demand for token will come from that more sustainable source. Big Man Things had some manager issues, it looks like. Just tell them that you're level 19 and all-rounder, and maybe they can let you stay on the stream or whatever level you are in specialty. Show them your skills page. All right. By the way, my initial take is that the idea of lobbies quite promising, especially if it can eventually be made into a really deep and detailed sandbox with lots of new tools and customization. Yeah, totally. And I think people will, like my hope is that certain people in the community basically become like lobby curators, or like, basically like game masters, where they're really good at setting up lobbies and, thinking of creative like scenarios to run, within this framework. And like maybe there's an opportunity eventually for people to like name the different games, provide a little bit of a backstory, like, like a little bit of a D&D vibe where like you can have a little bit more fun customizing a lobby and attracting some people to play in it. That's totally possible for us to do. Just like making it a bit more of a story world is kind of cool. So anyways, that's take is lots of new tools, including the ability to create new technologies, governance systems. A lot of people love to create things. Yep. So if Lobby Sim game creator platform can be made powerful, sophisticated enough for space agencies, researchers, economists to use it, that could be dynamite. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think we're going to start with just time for like the game itself right now is quite stable and fully featured. So, I think we're probably gonna, if we did this, which let's publish this recording, let's get some discussion going. But if this is the direction that we want to head, then I think like we basically just start with what we have and adjust, and having the ability for people to adjust the time frame, maybe one or two other things, and then like over time we tastefully add more customization in. And then, because going through all of those things initially would probably take a lot more time than we all want for this to take to be playable. Is there anything new coming for Classic Mission Control? When lands? So with Classic Mission Control, we're gonna have probably some new tech in the game, and I think like with land, I mean, right now we're building basically like 3 games in parallel, and like it just takes time, and I think like we're aligning with some pretty big opportunities, and with land itself, we have to think about, I think like the audience for land and where would land be sold, and if I'm ranking kind of priority of what will be the most effective in gaining attention and audience and players for Mission Control, I think it's getting relevance on networks that actually are doing volume. Straight up. I can't put it much simpler than that. Like, because if we just go through the thought experiment of launching land, if we were able to launch land tomorrow and do it through Atomic Hub, and let's say land gives you the ability to, you can purchase land with Marcia, and then land itself allows you to earn resources. It's not reaching that many new people, and that's really where I think we need to reach new people, and do it in a way where it's sustainable for the people that currently hold assets, but also it's appealing for people that don't have any assets yet. I mean, like it's as simple as that. Have you thought about the comment in main chat to also burn Marcia to progress in Opal, for example? Yeah, so right now with Opal, we're actually like going through a process of updating some of the game mechanics there. And so, yeah, I mean, we can look at it with burning Marcia for. We actually are going to introduce gold into Opal so that gold allows you to purchase different upgrades faster than if you were to earn them within the game itself by just playing the game and mining. You basically mine ore. You have to produce food. You produce fuel, and you can do that all by just setting up your settlement and idly sort of upgrading it and managing astronauts to boost your production, or you can spend some gold to like accelerate it. So I think it might be possible for us to have a way for you to burn some Marcia to basically convert to gold if you want. But why not replace gold with Marcia then? Because number one, no one has wax wallets or wants to create wax wallets. I've done all I can to tell the Wax team that they need to like make the onboarding process easier, and it's just not getting easier. So I don't know what else, unless we like find a way to get their attention and tell them that you can't have a barrier where you have to buy Wax in order to create a Wax wallet. It's like a chicken and the egg problem where no one can buy Wax. And so like no one wants to create a wallet. And so I think the best way is almost more of a one-way bridge. If you have Marcia and you want some gold to play Opal, you can do that. But I think that it's a lot more appealing for people because again, like Opal Adventure, it's meant to be a much larger audience that might not even be in crypto, and we're actually considering the first major like deployment of the game to not even have wallet integration, and you can buy gold with your credit card or the Telegram stars, but you're not, because we don't even know quite yet if we even want to be tied to the Telegram blockchain right now, because there's other messaging platforms that are spinning up mini games inside of them. I'm guessing Discord's going to also probably have this be more prominent, but there's other messaging systems that are interested in games as an onboarding tool. And unfortunately, Telegram is a different tech stack than Ethereum, which means that we build integration for Telegram. Now we have to worry about, Telegram becoming an island that becomes irrelevant, which might happen. I mean, it's doing well right now, but it's as a developer, as a game studio and a developer, it's important for us to weigh the risks of if we're adding wallet integration, needs to be, because we want to spend our time building games. We don't want to spend our time building like a ton of blockchain tools that are basically a function of incompetency of the blockchain industry as a whole, of being able to work together. It's just a waste of our time because it's not the value that we necessarily are providing. So anyways, yes, I understand like the sentiment and like kind of what you're getting at, and I think like the most sustainable thing would be if you have Marcia and you want to use that to buy some gold within reason. I mean, we can't just like let someone who has 50 million Marcia like buy all of the gold. But I think like there's something we can do there, and I think that's like where we need to figure out exactly what would make sense. But yeah, Marcia burnt for a code that you redeem for gold. Yeah, exactly. So like, yeah, exactly. That would allow you to like redeem the code without needing to connect a wallet and us create like a whole bridge system. So yeah. Cool. So I know we're kind of at an hour, but hopefully that gives you guys some more. I think we can kind of leave it at this for now. We have a lot going on with Outpost Surge. We basically rebuilt the game from the ground up, and we're coming out of hibernation essentially with that. And the game is like kind of crazy. So yeah, maybe next week we can get into that. We're probably going to have some visuals, some videos coming out. Well, we'll see where we're at. I mean, we're testing it. We're getting it good. We'll see where it is. But if we can get some videos out and stuff, we'll get you guys those. But sounds like it'd be good for us to just focus on getting to like a conclusion with the direction for Mission Control this week, and just like getting your guys' thoughts on it. And it seems generally positive just based on the comments here, so that's nice. But yeah, let's focus on that for now, and then we can get back to Outpost Surge once we all are feeling good about Mission Control. So, oh yeah, Ted Lasso, nice. Yeah, that's I have a believe sign that I travel with everywhere, and I just put it on top of my door, and I hit it every time I go through it. It just has a big Marcia symbol on it. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great rest of your week. And we'll talk next week. Thanks.